Okay, so kind of moving forward and continuing the discussion, I basically provided a scenario, and we have been discussing about this scenario with Tony George and Lisa, editors of Neuropsychopharmacology, in terms of, okay, if we have a reporting checklist, if we have a reporting checklist is being developed by consensus among main leaders of field A in neuroscience, and they provide recommendations on the minimum methodological details that should be reported in the paper in the field of A. And you can just remove the neuropsychopharmacology from the top and put your journal's name there and think about what is going to be your decision regarding these different scenarios. And I would love to ask you to put your idea in the chat space and what is going to be your choice when you want to have that specific reporting checklist. So the journal is going to endorse the checklist and require new submissions to report their adherence to the checklist A. The journal is going to just encourage authors to adhere to the checklist without reinforcing that. 3, the journal is going to remain silent regarding the checklist, but favor submissions that they report their adherence to the checklist. 4, the journal is going to remain neutral regarding adherence to the checklist A, and then the journal is going to discourage using checklist A to promote creativity in the field. So that is the kind of the 5 different scenarios, and I would like to ask you to just basically add your voting to the chat space. I mean, are you going to go for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? So let's see who is going to go first and basically post the. So Warren for 2, Beatrice for 2. Okay, let's see what others are going to go for the votes. 2, number 1. Okay, so we have Christina, David 1, 2 or 3, 2, Charlie 1. Okay, let's see what others think about. Let me just bring up the scenarios again. So these are the scenarios: 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. What is your decision in terms of how would be the position of your journal when you kind of want to consider a reporting checklist? Okay, 1, changing 2 to 1. Okay, Martin 2, Alex 1. We have a number. I'm not sure about the name of that number, but yeah, 1, 2. So as you can see, I mean, there is a kind of a variety of responses, and we have people who have different ideas. I mean, we are moving between 1 and 2, but there are kind of 3s as well here. So it would be nice to have other ideas and see. I mean, that is going to be the discussion for today in terms of how that is going to move forward and what are the ideas that we have for that. Okay, so my name is Hamed Ekhtiari, and I'm going to basically give you an idea about some of the things that we have been discussing. I put my slides in the QR code, and I work at the University of Minnesota. I'm based in Minneapolis right now. So I do not have any specific conflict of interest. I've been involved in developing some of the checklists. I work with the what we call International Network of Neuroimaging Neuromodulation, trying to promote collaboration, global representation, transparency, and methodological rigor in the field of neuromodulation, neuroimaging. And we have a sub-networks called International Electrical Stimulation with fMRI. And I mean, the thing that we do what we call kind of electrical stimulation inside the scanner or outside the scanner. And in the ideal scenario, we really like to have online closed loop brain stimulation inside the scanner. So it's a kind of then specific area of research that we do. This is how it looks in kind of in as a kind of diagram, putting people inside the scanner, doing the stimulation with brilliant postdocs. And as you can imagine, it's not a really large field of kind of science and neuroscience. So far, we have some like 300 publications using a combination of fMRI with transcranial electrical stimulation. And around 100 of those publications are online. So they did a stimulation inside the scanner, or they do concurrent electrical stimulation and fMRI. But the field is growing. So the number of publications is growing in the field. And this is a small niche of research that people are doing. but that is kind of, that field is growing over the time. We realized that there is kind of a large range of variation in terms of how people report things in that specific field of concurrent TSFMRI. So we ended up kind of having and developing a steering committee of people who are actually running these sort of studies, and they are key opinion leaders in the field. And we realized that we need to kind of encourage people to report whatever they are doing in a more transparent way, because we realize there are publications that are really hard to replicate because they haven't reported all the details that we have been interested to know about the study and the details of what they have done. So we discuss about what is going to be the parameter space, what are the factors that we really like people to report when they put people inside the scanner and do transcranial stimulation. And we realize there are factors, and we started to think about, okay, we need to have a consensus. And we developed a protocol, we put the protocol on OSF, and we defined a pathway to basically systematically develop a checklist for concurrent TSFMRI on the methodological details that people have to report when they publish a TSFMRI study. Okay, so all the technical details are on OSF. To be able to do that, we did a systematic review at that period of time. And at that period of time, we had some like 57 publications in the field. Now we have over 100. And we basically invited everybody who had a publication as first author or last author in the field who are actively doing this thing. And as Charlie mentioned, we really want to be inclusive. So the committee is not going to be just me and my friend and friend of my friend. No, it's just going to be kind of in a systematic way. We invited everybody who had publications. So we tried to be as inclusive as possible and bring people from around the world to the discussion. So we made an expert panel of 75 experts and 30, we had 13 steering committee members as well. And we developed an initial checklist with 16 items and some extra recommendations. We asked people to put their thoughts on that checklist. And we have been collecting ideas about how to what is the importance of this item, what are the things that we need to change in these items. And we ended up having 17 items being endorsed as something like the major items to be reported and 42 additional recommendations. So this is how we basically ran the surveys and collected quantitative information about how people like these items to be inside the final checklist. And we ended up with a checklist with 17 items that is publicly available, and we have also some additional recommendations, so like 42 additional recommendations that would be best practices for the field. But we went back and evaluated publications in this field with those 17 items that we considered as basically essential to be reported. And we realized that there are several factors that they have not been reported in previous studies. Items that we considered as really essential to be reported. And as you can see here, there are just very few studies. These are the studies that we evaluated. There are just very few studies that they have adherence to these items over something like 60%. So it is just unfortunate to see there are many publications that they haven't not reported what we considered as essential in the field. So we published the paper and the process with team of people in Nature Protocols and as a sort of consensus statement, and it is already available. And I was basically discussing this issue with Tony George in a meeting basically a dinner meeting that we had in SOPP in San Diego basically last year. And we have been discussing about, okay, how I can encourage other journal editors to basically ask their those who submit papers in their journal, how they might be able to adhere to those checklists. And we ended up realizing that we need to open up the discussion to others